I can't even, it's too cute. Somehow, Kirby is even more adorable in 3D, even when exploring a post-apocalyptic landscape. And even though it's taken 30 years for it to finally happen, the pink puff nearly knocks out of the park in his first 3D outing. It only took Kirby being sucked through a mysterious vortex and dropped into a strange land to make it happen. A land where cities are seemingly abandoned and theme parks left to rot. But hey, no lines. Woo! But is it enough for someone like me who burned out on the same old Kirby games years ago? Let's find out in GameXplain's in-depth review of Kirby and the Forgotten Land. So first and foremost, Kirby just feels good in 3D. Almost as if he should have tried it far sooner. His overall movement has been translated perfectly into 3 dimensions, with a fun floaty feel that makes running, jumping, inhaling, and flying a spring breeze. Although, you can only stay afloat for about 5 seconds or so this time before Kirby gets tuckered out. But it's just long enough that you'll rarely notice a time limit unless you're intentionally trying to push it. Now, it may not be quite as precise as, say, a Mario game, but it's not trying to be either. Kirby and the Forgotten Land isn't so much about navigating precarious platforms as it is exploring and destroying everything in sight. Yeah, Kirby was never much of one for conservation, was he? Because your main objective isn't just to plow through every level, but rather to find and rescue the captured Waddle Dees along the way, as you'll need enough of them to open the boss gate at the end of each world. Look, they even attack it like an adorable Pikmin game. And not only that, but the more that you find, the more they'll gradually rebuild Waddle Dee Town, adding new shops, minigames, and other points of interest. Think of it as an even more charming Terry Town from Breath of the Wild. And it's this Waddle Dee hunt that truly benefits the game's design, because getting to the goal is basically secondary, even though you will find 3Ds for doing so. Hey, this truly is a 3D Kirby. Each level even opens with a mission screen, offering clues on how to find the Waddle Dees across 5 different objectives. Now, some of the objectives are always the same, being to clear the stage and find the hidden Waddle Dees scattered about. But there are 3 more missions unique to each stage that will earn you even more Ds. It might be something like finding a set amount of tulips or posters, or defeating a mid-boss without getting hit, or even something else a little bit more mysterious. Especially since most of the objectives are hidden until after you complete some of the other missions first, which I appreciated as it allows you to focus on just having fun the first time through before encouraging a replay for cleanup. And you'll really have to go out of your way to find some of those Waddle Dees, and I love it. It all feels like a slower, more methodical version of Super Mario 3D World, complete with mostly linear level designs, but ones where exploration is a clear focus. In addition, the levels look and feel more natural here, as if part of an actual world rather than oddly shaped set pieces. Of course, Kirby can still inhale nearly everything within sight, and that's more true now than ever. Like seriously, that can't be healthy, right? And swallowing certain enemies will net Kirby a copy ability, allowing him to mimic the enemy, which can completely change up Kirby's attacks and sometimes even how he moves too. Look, I have to explain this just in case that one person who's never played a Kirby game before is watching this. Hi, I see you! There are 12 in total this time, including returning classics like Sword, Cutter, Bomb, and Dice, and they're all a blast to relearn in 3D, feeling both familiar and fresh at the same time. Whether it's freezing enemies, rolling bombs, or flying around as a fireball, it's all a great time. And shout out to Needle, which lets you roll around absorbing enemies like a spiked Katamari ball before launching them as projectiles. That's what I'm talking about. And there are a couple of entirely new copy abilities too, being Drill and Ranger. Drill is a ton of fun, enabling Kirby to dig underground for secrets, or even better, popping out from underneath an enemy. Surprise! I really like that one. Whereas I didn't enjoy Ranger quite as much initially, as it essentially turns Kirby into a slow-paced shooter. Although you can fire quickly from the hip, the real power lies in charging up your shots and manually aiming them by dragging a slow targeting reticle around. It felt like a bit of a drag. That is until I upgraded the copy ability a couple of times and realized that a fully charged shot is ridiculously powerful, which not only creates a massive blast zone, but also stuns anything it touches, including bosses. And that suddenly justifies your time spent as a sitting duck, making it all feel incredibly rewarding. Wait a second, upgrading copy abilities? Yeah, I sort of glossed over that there, didn't I? Because for the first time ever, every single copy ability can be upgraded multiple times by cashing in rare collectibles at the Waddle Dee blacksmith in town, which makes them stronger and grants new abilities, such as making the sword way bigger, or giving bombs the ability to link together and eventually drive themselves right into enemies. While I don't quite think it's a game changer or anything, I overall did enjoy the upgrade system, as it does help lend a real sense of progression to the adventure, making you much stronger the deeper into the game you get. I mean, some of those abilities get crazy at the maximum level, to the point that some are arguably overpowered and can be exploited. but I still had fun using them. Plus, the upgrade system provides an incentive to tackle the bite-sized challenges that pop up all over the world map, as they award the exact rare collectibles that you need for the upgrades. And there's quite a few of these challenges, and each one will put your copyability skills to the test, especially if you end up going for the bonus target time for each one, which awards additional cash, which is a bit of a lame reward considering cash can be found everywhere else in the game. So the copy abilities are all a lot of fun, especially when fully upgraded. Although I should mention that their movesets are a little simplified compared to the 2D versions, but the added dexterity in 3D makes up for it. The bigger issue is that there's only 12 of them, or really 10, since do sleep and crash really count? And that's only about half of the usual amount. Although, to be fair, if you count every upgraded form as its own, then there are well over 30 copy abilities in total. But since the upgrades are mostly incremental and essentially act as full replacements, it doesn't quite solve the issue. Now just to be clear, I never got bored of the copy abilities, but it definitely felt like I was seeing the same ones a little more frequently than I would in past games. Plus, some of my favorite abilities are missing in action, like Plasma, Wing, and Wheel. Although I suppose the car is basically 4 wheels in one. But, and this is a big but, Kirby can now consume, or rather try to, all kinds of massive objects like cars, traffic cones, archways, vending machines, light bulbs, staircases, and more in what the game calls Mouthful Mode. Think of these as simpler, highly specialized copy abilities that are pretty wild, letting you perform special actions like driving, slamming, gliding, vending, lighting, repositioning, and more. However, unlike copy abilities, these are only accessible in very specific areas, as you'll always have to abandon the power at some point. Think of them as like context-sensitive power-ups. They're not always mandatory unless you're going for 100%, but I did find myself using them whenever I could because they're always a good time, with driving the car, being a light bulb, gliding as an archway, or riding a roller coaster being particular standouts. Some others can be pretty basic though, only letting you jostle the control stick to open or break something, but it's still oddly satisfying, and I appreciated how all of them mixed up the gameplay. This probably won't come as a surprise to you, but Kirby and the Forgotten Land is not an especially challenging game for most of the journey. Yes, even when on Wild Mode, which provides about half the health of the aptly titled Spring Breeze version. But it's not a total cakewalk either, as it's really not all that hard to die if you play carelessly. And the final few hours, in particular, truly step up the difficulty in a big way, and it'll probably challenge even the most hardcore Kirby enthusiasts. And the boss fights play a key role in that, especially the later ones, as the Forgotten Land has some of the most epic boss fights I've ever seen. Not just for a Kirby game, but ever. Of course, I'm not going to spoil the coolest ones here, but believe me when I say that some of them wouldn't feel out of place in the Platinum game. Using Kirby's dodge is basically required in taking on some of these bosses, and it's so much better than it was in past games, allowing Kirby to evade attacks with the grace of a ballerina. The action even does a cool bullet time thing for near misses, which looks so incredibly cool. Now, if you want to take a break from the action at any point, you can always swing by Waddle Dee Town for all kinds of fun activities that get added over time, like grabbing a bite to eat, taking a nap in Kirby's house, enjoying cutscenes in the local theater, taking on part-time work to earn some fast cash, or even go fishing. Most of the activities aren't especially deep, but the minigames are a fun distraction. And Waddle Dee Town is also where you'll eventually find the Coliseum, where, like in past Kirby games, you can take on a gauntlet of enemies and bosses, in which you'll have to carefully ration the provided health recovery items between rounds. It's pretty fun if you're into the whole boss rush type thing, and I did appreciate how it loosely ties into the overall narrative this time. But this is also where I discovered how exploitable some of the fully upgraded copy abilities can be, as myself and a friend were nearly able to beat the final Coliseum challenge without having to retry. Almost. Oh right, I haven't even mentioned co-op yet! Because to top it all off, the entire game is drop in and drop out co-op at any time, where a second player can join in as Bandana Dee with a completely unique spear-based moveset, allowing you to stab, throw spears, or fly around, while raining down spears from above. I ended up playing about half the game with a Bandana Buddy. Get it? We both had a wonderful time, as we could divide and conquer when looking for secrets or attacking and distracting bosses. I especially enjoyed a part of the game where I was playing as a mostly helpless Kirby Lightbulb, whereas Waddle Dee helped protect me and clear the way. However, because the camera always focuses on Kirby, it can make things a little tricky for Bandana Dee at times, especially when he strays a little too far and is forcibly teleported back to Kirby against his will. But it's rarely an issue and more something just to keep in mind. Now, unfortunately, because Bandana Dee can't use any copy abilities at all, perhaps by virtue of not having a mouth, seriously, how's that guy even eat? I could tell that my partner in crime was a little sad at times that they couldn't make use of any of the cool abilities that Kirby can, It's just too bad that Kirby doesn't have the option to create an ally out of enemies like in some past games, thereby giving your co-op buddy a more varied experience. In any case, co-op is an overall wonderful addition, and I enjoyed it a lot more here than in the Mario games, as it feels like a truly cooperative experience rather than a pseudo-competitive one. Finally, we have to touch on the game's presentation, and just how gorgeous Kirby and the Forgotten Land can look with its cute stylized art style, which is also surprisingly detailed at points. Stepping into the theme park at night for the first time is nearly jaw-dropping. Although, the game's mostly stable 30 frames per second frame rate is a little disappointing compared to Mario's usual 60, but it otherwise works just fine for the game's slower pace. However, the game does fairly aggressively scale back the frame rate of enemies that aren't even all that far away, which you will notice often, and it can be a little distracting, even if the lo-fi appearance almost has a charm of its own. And as for the music, well, it's simply wonderful throughout. From the very moment that I heard the bombastic theme in the first stage, all the way to the epic final boss fight, it's so good. Kirby and the Forgotten Land is simply a delight all the way through. It feels great to play, the new copy and mouthful abilities are a blast, and it features some of the most epic boss fights I've ever seen. While the relatively few copy abilities is a little disappointing, the game is so varied otherwise that's an easy thing to overlook, and the entire experience might be even better when playing with a friend. I loved Kirby and the Forgotten Land, and it might just be my new favorite game in the entire series. Although it may have taken Kirby a little longer to fully embrace the third dimension than we all wanted, the Forgotten Land will quickly make you forget all about the 30-year wait. And there you have it everyone, our review of Kirby and the Forgotten Land. Thank you so much for watching, and of course make sure to subscribe to GameXplain for more on Kirby and the Forgotten Land and everything else Nintendo Switch as well. We'll catch you later, bye everyone!